to read it when it's cold one more time, and then we'll post that for the public to share. But we've had several important strides on our strategic work goals since the mid-year review update. You'll notice when you see the end of year review report, you will have information about what we provided to you at the mid-year review. So you'll see some of the same data points, you'll see some of the same progress summaries that we provided to you all, and then an update at this point in the year of where departments have gotten to with those strategic work goals. So you'll get to see a really helpful, hopefully side-by-side of where we were at the mid-year, where we got to at the end of year, and what some next steps are going to look like for the strategic work moving forward. So that will be coming to you this week and will be posted on the website tomorrow. Any questions about that? Okay, perfect. Tonight, I'm going to be giving you an update on the continuous improvement system. As you all know, my title is Director of Continuous Improvement, and so one of the things that I do in the district is ensure that we have a system in place and that we have a healthy system in place to track progress on our work, identify areas where we can improve, work with departments to put innovations and improvements in place, and determine that we're meeting the needs of our students, our employees, our families, and community members. And this year, as you all have also heard me present before, we are moving to a new ISO standard. We've been certified to the ISO 9001 standard for organizations. So moving to the ISO 21001 standard will allow us to be certified to an internationally recognized standard for educational organizations. And so in the spirit of that transition, I've been spending the last couple of years really taking in all of the work that we've been doing as an organization since we received our initial certification in 2003. And really trying to make sure that I, for myself, understand fully the continuous improvement system that we have in place and how it's supposed to work. And also identifying, based on the new standard and some of the expectations for that standard, what are some ways we can even further enhance this system so that we have really strong structures in place to evaluate our work, determine where we can make improvements, and move next steps forward. And so my update tonight is to share some of the vision for the continuous improvement system as we transition to ISO 21001. Much of it is the same kinds of foundations that we've had in place as an organization for 20 years. Some things that you will see are some new layers that I have wanted to add to the continuous improvement system and that I feel we can be benefited from as we move to this new ISO 21001 standard. And so something that you've always heard us talk about as it relates to continuous improvement is the way that works in cycles. We have a cycle of improvement as a district when we identify something that we need to improve upon. We identify that area, we make a plan for how we're going to improve it, we identify how we're going to know that we're being successful, we measure. Once we measure, we study, is there anything else that we need to do to make this better, or are we on the right track? And then we improve and we act. But as I've been in my role for the last couple of years, I've started to notice that there are really a couple of different layers to that system that all work really closely together, but all also sort of have different goals and all tackle different kinds of work. And so that process of the layers of the system is what I wanted to share with you tonight, and just what that vision will look like as we move forward with our ISO 21001 certification next year. And so the first layer of the continuous improvement system that we really have at work is sort of this internal tracking kind of layer, where departments are setting to work implementing their day-to-day tasks. We're doing the work of the district to educate students. We're providing standard processes and providing standard services to our community members, and we're implementing strategic work. All of the things happening at this level are sort of those day-to-day things that we know are happening in the school system on a regular basis. And so at this level, what we're really thinking about are all of our departments and all of our department chiefs sort of keeping the wheels spinning, keeping track of how things are going in the day in, day out, our weekly department check-ins that we have at SLT, department leadership team meetings that occur, all of those kinds of things are what's happening at this layer. And so some things that we look to sort of track, how are we doing with implementing our day-to-day work? How do we know that things are going well? We look at a couple of different sources. First, any of our key performance indicators that we set about strategic work that we report to you all on and that you hold us accountable to as a district, that's one really important area that we look at to determine, are we being successful with the day-to-day processes and our strategic work. We also look at some of our feedback loops that we keep going all the time, like our communication groups. That's a really important example of a group that meets on a monthly basis for all of our different stakeholder groups where we can collect regular feedback on how things are going. As I mentioned, communication groups. We also have restarted, I shared this with you all last month, we restarted our process of internal auditing as an organization. So we also look at all of our processes and our procedures as an organization. We send individuals who are not in the same department to watch that process being done and determine, does this process work effectively? Is it delivering the service as it's supposed to be delivered? Is it documented the way that it's supposed to be documented? And all of those things get checked on in the internal audit process. And then finally, surveys that we administer, like our parent survey, employee survey, and different things like that allow us to sort of track just at that very first layer, how are things going? How are we doing? Some other important inputs that are part of this process include department action plans for how different departments will implement their work over the course of the year. That's a really important plan that's set up that allow people to move forward. Senior leadership team meetings, department leadership team meetings, cabinet and direct report meetings where we're all able to kind of take stock of how things are going and determine where we can move the organization forward on our day-to-day work. Day-to-day procedures, of course, as I mentioned, we have an internal auditing process that allows us to track, are our organizational procedures effective or are there areas where we need to improve on? And then finally, state and district data, student performance. Obviously, the most important measurement of our success as an organization is the performance of our students. And so that's always something that we look to is that benchmark data. And I talked to you all a little bit about the plan, do, study, act cycle. That's been an important feature of our organization and the way that we improve. Really, since we started the process of ISO certification, this is a very important feature of our continuous improvement system. And each of these different layers in our continuous improvement system all kind of have their own cycle where we plan, do, study, and act. So at this particular level, an example of this might be with a department action plan centered on a strategic work goal. A department sets those plans up. There are people who own specific aspects of that strategic work. They decide how they're going to know that they're successful in that work. They implement that, they do. They study, they collect that data and determine where they can make improvements or if things are going as they should. And then they act. If they need to improve, they figure out what that looks like. If it is moving along like it should, then that's great too. At times, in this first layer, we may get to points where, perhaps strategic work is not working the way that it should. Something's not being implemented the way it should, or it's not having the desired results. Maybe we find that there's a procedure in our organization that's not working the way that it should, isn't delivering its desired results. Maybe we get feedback from parents, community members, that there's a specific aspect of our organization that we need to improve, much like we continue to see with our goals surrounding parent and family engagement. That was feedback that we got from several different groups, that there were some changes that we could make in that space. At that point, when we get to that area where we're finding there may be some deeper things at work here that we really need to address and we need to identify what the root cause is. That's kind of when we move into layer 2. And so when we wrap up at layer 1, essentially the goal here is to take our plan that we started with. It may be that we have to scratch that plan out and create something new. If that happens, that's okay. We improve services and we implement strategic work in the way that we're supposed to. If we find that there are deeper levels of improvements that have to be made, we move into another layer, layer 2, which is more of a process study, process improvement kind of step. This is not necessarily focused solely on day-to-day work that's being implemented. It may be that we've identified something that is not working like it should and it just needs a little extra study. Maybe we put together a project team that's going to investigate why that particular aspect of the organization is not functioning like it should. Maybe departments work with me as the Director of Continuous Improvement to schedule follow-up internal audits so I can do a little bit of deeper study as to why a process isn't operating the way that it should. So a lot of the questions that we ask ourselves at this particular level are, why isn't this process working? Why isn't this service being realized? And why isn't this program being implemented? So those are just examples of some things that we might look into at this layer that require some different studies. As I indicated, some things we might do with this layer include working groups, process audits, just a deeper level of interviewing, studying, really trying to determine when we find something is not working well and the solution is not entirely clear, how do we get to the root cause of what's going on so we can make the right kind of solution and put that in place. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know if anybody else is getting the blue alerts today, but I've been getting those, okay. Some data sources that we might look into. A lot of times our internal audits will lead us into this layer. We'll find in an internal audit that there's a process that we have as an organization. Maybe it needs to be improved a little bit, but it's not necessarily clear exactly what kind of improvement needs to be put in place. And so I'll work with the department to ask some deeper questions about why a process isn't functioning like it should. So really a lot of those internal audits will kind of work their way into this layer. Whatever outcomes need to improve, if there's a project team that's working together on a specific kind of solution, there may be specific areas that group is looking at to determine how we know if we're going to be successful. A really good example of this is our project team that's working together at this level to implement the RFID system in our transportation department. We've been piloting that system with student IDs in 4 of our schools, and that group has set specific metrics that we're tracking to determine if that pilot is going to be a successful solution to continue to improve transportation services in the district. A few inputs, again, mid-year and end-of-year review are an important thing that occur at this layer where we sort of step back and we look at all of those different pieces of the strategic work. If there are things that we need to make deeper improvements on, those things typically get highlighted in the mid-year and end-of-year review as things that are really important enhancements in the strategic work where maybe a project team is going to form to work on that a little bit more deeply. Some further study is going to be done to determine how that's going to continue to get better. We also, as I indicated, internal audits are a really important component at this layer. If there's anything that's identified as part of the auditing process that we need to improve and requires further study, that's a really important step to determine how we can make things better at this particular level. And then finally, district data. If there's a data point where, again, it's not clear exactly what the right solution is to put in place and it requires further study, that's another really important data source here. And so an example of what that plan, do, study, act cycle might look like at this particular layer, let's say an internal audit, as I indicated in my earlier example, an internal audit finds that there's a process in the organization that is not producing the desired effects. The outcomes that the department indicates are supposed to be coming from that particular procedure just aren't being realized. And so a plan might be me working with the department leader to identify what kind of audit we're going to complete, who are some other people that I can interview to get a sense of, on a broader scale, what really happens with this process. Who are some of the different people that are supposed to be receiving this service? And can I talk to some of those individuals? The do would be me completing that process audit and doing that deeper level of study. Study, of course, would be me going into that data and determining, okay, what are some of the different areas that we're seeing here? Is there a clear solution that we can put in place? Or does this require even more study? Does this require even more people really investigating this situation? And then we act. We either put a solution in place, I draw up a report and I share that with the department chief to indicate what kinds of things we can do to correct that particular issue, or we continue investigating and we determine what might be the next level that we could put in place. And so the things that we hope to accomplish at this layer are uncovering a root cause and fixing that root cause as quickly as possible, or engaging in deeper levels of improvement, because sometimes it may be that a department needs additional staff. It may be that there needs to be a broader team that's really engaged deeply in the work of identifying improvements for the organization. And that's when we move into layer 3, which is where we see our improvement teams that are really centered on identifying areas in the organization where we know there is definitely something that we can do to improve. We know that there are some circumstances that we're seeing that are not producing the desired results. But it may be that the solution that needs to be put in place is not entirely clear. It may be that some of the deeper study at that second layer didn't give us exactly the right kind of answer that we needed to know this is the solution that we need to put in place. And so, as I indicated, some reasons that we may have groups like this, district-wide effort. You know, if there is an effort in the organization that really requires expertise from all of our different department teams, we'll have continuous improvement teams that form or working groups that form to implement those things and make sure that they're implemented well. I have not been part of any initiative that was a continuous improvement team that didn't involve some kind of expertise from every single department in this organization. It's just typically those kinds of tasks require the expertise from all of us, and all of us working together is what allows things to be done successfully. And one thing I really want to be sure that I mention that is an important distinction for me with our continuous improvement teams. I think that those groups work best when the problem that we need to solve or the solution that we need to put in place is somewhat unclear, because it's that collaboration and that deep level of study that those groups engage in that allow us to really get a broad sense of what's going on as an organization. A really good example that I'll share at this point in time is some of the work that we've been doing as a parent engagement continuous improvement team. That group includes a lot of different department expertise, all of our level directors, individuals from the communications team, from our family center, and we've really been able to engage in an understanding of what that looks like as a district from a lot of different perspectives, and it's giving us a really good sense of how we can make that work count as we continue to implement it and as we move forward. The data sources for this, whatever metrics the group chooses that are going to determine how we know we're being successful. Continuous improvement teams really kind of operate as their own entity in the sense that maybe there's a continuous improvement team that's working on a specific aspect of our strategic work goals, but there may be particular things that team identifies that are really important to decide, is this working like it should, or do we need to go back to the drawing board and try something different? Some inputs with this, again, all of those things that occurred at the first layer, it may be that an internal audit uncovered a process was not working very effectively. Deeper study determined that it may be a broader organizational issue than just repairing a process in one department. And a continuous improvement team forms to investigate how can we make this work better as a full organization with all of their support and resources of all of our departments. District data, our student data, all of the data that we collect on a year-round basis from surveys, all of those external feedback loops, all of that goes into evaluating whether something needs to be elevated to the level of a continuous improvement team. Mid-year and end-of-year review, again, very important components of this. You have heard us talk regularly about all of the different ways that data that informed our mid-year review directly went into informing our strategic work for next year. And some of our strategic work goals include the formation of continuous improvement teams that are going to work to identify and address some of these issues. And then finally, action plans. There are some important parts of action plans that include, especially on mine, implementing continuous improvement teams and making sure that those groups complete work like they should. And so this is definitely something that we see at work in the continuous improvement team structure. One of the things that I have worked to do in my role in the last 2 years is really enhance the process of those teams forming and how we decide what we're going to accomplish, how we decide what we're going to do to determine if we're successful or not, how we'll refine it, how we'll put those solutions in place, and most importantly, something that I think always deserves a lot of attention is going back and determining, is this working? A really good example that I'll give from one of our continuous improvement teams last year, we formed a crisis communications team during the 2020-2021 school year to just evaluate some of the processes we had in place. After action reports determined that there were some instances where maybe not everyone was included in a crisis communication that needed to be as quickly as possible. And so we wanted to determine how do we ensure that all of those necessary parties are brought in as soon as possible. What's the best way to ensure that people are in the loop as quickly as they need to be? What we looked at our procedures that we had established and tried to determine if maybe we needed to update those procedures and rework them. Our group set out with that plan to accomplish those goals. We studied and evaluated if there was a resource that was needed. We looked at some of our existing crisis communications efforts and really analyzed those and picked them apart and determined where some of the issues came up. We identified some solutions based on that. We put those things in place whenever the 2021-22 school year started. We studied them, and then we came back together in September and decided, are these processes working? Are these improvements that we put in place really helping with our crisis communications efforts? And we have found, as we continue to revisit that work, that they have been improved. And we have seen some improvements from that in working with our safety team and in working with our academic team. And so the goal of this layer is improving services and implementing strategic work, which if you've really been following along, just sitting on the edge of your seat, which I know everyone does when we talk about the continuous improvement system, that looks very similar to layer one. And that's kind of the point. Once we get to a place where we've got this area that we've improved on as a district and we've put some things in place, ideally, those improvements and those fixes should just go right back into that first layer where it's just part of our day-to-day. It's part of how we do business, and we can continue to track progress on that, and we operate with an improved system as a district. So that's the 3-layered system. This is something, I hope this kind of helps you visualize some improvements and some enhancements that I think that we can continue to make. Much of this is things that we were already doing. The thing that I really think will be beneficial to the organization that I think was important based on the way the ISO 21001 standard was written is that second layer. I think that we as an organization had layer 1 down pat. I think we had continuous improvement teams down pat. But I think with the move to the new standard, we can really make some enhancements in making sure that there's another layer where we stop and ask ourselves, how can we do this a little bit better? Does it need to be something that we work on a little bit more? Does it need to be a continuous improvement team? Is it something that departments can address on their own? And so this is something that I've been working on, really kind of writing into some of our procedures for continuous improvement as we've been working toward that new ISO standard. So the whole layering process is something that is more present in some of our continuous improvement system processes and procedures. And that's all I have.
I have one question.
Yes.
How many departments are involved in this, of Montgomery County School System involved in this continuous improvement system?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them.
How
yes.
many people in your office?
3.
Okay, because I know that you also go to Nashville and you do several other things in conjecture. But when the presentation that you just gave is a very detailed interpretation of what it is that we do every day. And to have someone to be able to articulate it the way you have and make me believe that you are there all the time, because I know that you're not. But I appreciate your presentation. It's believe it or not, I was sitting on the edge of my chair listening as you were speaking, because all of these things let me know that the district is moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And what I like about it is all of this causes students to improve in their achievement. So I thank you all for what you do every day as a senior leadership team. And, I can sleep at night because I know you all do the right things.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Huff, next item, please.
That is it for our reports, Mr. Patterson. So I think we're going to county commissioners.
Okay, those 3 were together, then great. Any comments from county commissioners? Before I ask, any comments from the school board, I want to welcome Ms. Debbie Cummings again here. Glad to have her in our presence tonight. And any comments from board members? I think they're on their formal session. But you're welcome to speak if you like. Thank you. Thank you for the good evening. Dr. Huff, other business.
Yes, sir. I wanted to share a few comments with you this evening. Providing an accessible and inclusive website for our stakeholders is so very important, and CMCSS, I want to let you know, has recently improved its website accessibility. The communications and technology departments have implemented the User Way accessibility widget on the website. This widget makes the website more inclusive for people with visual impairments, dyslexia, cognitive and learning disabilities, motor impairment, and more. And additionally, although CMCSS has always provided translation services for the website, this widget provides a more user-friendly experience. If you visit our website, look for the blue icon with a person in the center on the top right corner to use the accessibility features. And then the next item that I wanted to share was, I'm sure that many of you have heard that the Keep Kids Fed Act has been extended. So that will go beyond June 30th, and it will last until July 27th, 2022. Before the president signed the bill on Saturday, of course, we assumed that our meals were going to expire on June 30th. So we're so very excited that that will continue. And as you know, that's once a week curbside pickup on Wednesdays at West Creek, St. B, Liberty, and Cumberland Heights Elementary Schools. And there's directional signage at those schools for parents to follow. And it's first come, first served basis. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that the date has been extended so that we can provide the food for our families. So I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. And the last thing I wanted to share is a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Sikorsky shared an update about our summer programs. And so I wanted to share a few pictures of some of our students participating in the summer programs. So this first slide here is from our elementary program. You can see Spider-Man there. And the second pictures are from some middle school students. So I just wanted to make sure you all see some of the happy faces of our students participating in our summer programs. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you. I forgot, Mr. Johnson, you know, and maybe I'm missing all of this. You know, we take pictures and everything, the point of prides and everything. Where are they on our internet? They used to be on Facebook, I think. And are they still on Facebook and I'm just missing them? Okay.
I'll make sure they get sent to you, sir.
Okay. So they have been on there. Okay, thank you. Any other comments from board members?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
As we know, this evening is Dr. Huff's last official meeting with us as the interim director, and we greatly appreciated her time and her efforts. And she came at a time where our ship had rocked, and she took the helm and she righted our ship, and she got us going back on course. And we really appreciate that, and we really appreciate the effort she made. Dr. Huff has never missed a beat. I know that whenever I sent her an email or a parent concern, she got right back to me. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about her. As far as communication, she's an excellent communicator and communicated at all times. Right now, we've got just a couple small presentations for you. We have something else for you, but we're going to present this to you now.
are adjourned.